Welcome to That's Good Sports. I'm Brandon. I hope you enjoy your special Patreon-only videos, Perna. Since you people give me your hard-earned money out of the kindness of your pocket, I thought I would return the favor and stick my hand directly into your pocket so you know what your money is being. Okay, that sounds creepy. I'm creating an exclusive Patreon video once to twice a month, depending on how crazy shit gets. Just for your eyeballs. It's not going to take away from my usual content on YouTube. It's just an added bonus for the people who donate, which now allows me to pay Will Keys and TJ Carpenter to help me write, and for TJ to help edit these videos just for you. Now, the question is, do I do the intro like normal? Cool. The intro still works here on Patreon. I was worried about that. Now, today's video is going to try and answer these questions. Is this quarterback class as good as everyone thinks it is? Draft class, that is. Is it really worth tanking? Or is that even real in the NFL? Why the fuck would Tua want to go to the Dolphins, or now the Bengals? And did we learn anything from the 2018 QB draft class? And in the next video, I think I will put a poll up here on Patreon, and you guys can pick the topic. But let's discuss tanking, which Roger Goodell doesn't believe in, and neither do I. And if you do, I bet you believe in stupid things like the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy, or that the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny can make babies. Nobody wants to see hairy teeth or bunnies made of just bone and enamel. And if you are going to tank Miami or Cincinnati, those are safe football towns to do it because nobody really cares about football there. Currently, a few NFL teams certainly are trying to rebuild by stockpiling draft picks. Isn't that essentially what Sashi Brown did for the Browns? Is it working? We don't really know. This offseason, we would have said, hell yes. But just a couple months into this season, nobody knows if Baker Mayfield is a good quarterback, or a robot whose sole function is to throw interceptions, or a really well-paid facial hair model. Nothing says trust me with the future of your franchise like a molestache and a trench coat. Freddie Kitchens doesn't look like a head coach. He looks like 3 head coaches. The fact that his quarterback is a Baker is only fitting. But Baker and Kitchens were John Dorsey decisions who came in and took over after Sashi Brown was canned. So Sashi didn't even really get to finish the pastry-themed rebuild John Dorsey had in mind. Where's Dalvin Cook? But tanking isn't just about stockpiling draft picks. It's also about losing as much as possible. Gotta make sure you are picking as early as you are often. After all, anyone can stockpile draft picks. The Patriots, the Eagles, Seahawks, and Packers are all in the top 5 in the most draft picks in the last 2 decades, along with Cleveland and Cincinnati. And the teams not from Ohio have all won fucking Super Bowls. It takes a real worm of a franchise to get comfortable with the strategy of losing on purpose. You have to not just be comfortable with losing, you have to enjoy it. Like a dad playing pickup with his kids or a third-party candidate for president. Miami has had the 18th most draft picks, but if you're going to stockpile some draft picks, you also have to be smart enough to hit on those draft picks. I mean, we're talking about the franchise that paid Jay Cutler $11 million to come out of retirement for 14 games of haphazardly not doing his job very well and apathetically smoking a cigarette naked during a hurricane. Let's not accuse the Dolphins of having a plan. Minkah Fitzpatrick might be Defensive Player of the Year now that he's out of Miami and in Pittsburgh. Worries me that they were too stupid to see how good he really was. Tanking is losing, and losing on purpose. Tanking isn't the accidental shame of shooting yourself in the foot and then going to prison for your stupidity like Plaxico Burress. Tanking is shooting yourself in the foot on purpose and getting paid for it because someone wants to jerk off to that kind of thing. And by someone, I mean Jets fans. No one revels in the shame of their own franchise being celebrated annually at the NFL draft more than Jets fans. The only team that has purposefully tanked and won a championship is the Houston Astros, who were last place or second to last place in their division for 4 consecutive years. The 76ers did it only to hit on half of their lottery picks, and are a team that hasn't yet made it to the conference finals. But it did, however, produce the Sam Hinkie tanking manifesto, a 13-page resignation letter, an outright refusal to acknowledge that he failed in his effort to produce a competitive basketball team. But the NFL is not the NBA. There are 53 players on a team, not 12. And there are requirements on how much money you have to spend, not just how much money you can spend every season. This means you have to not only be bad, you have to pay out the ass to do so. Maybe the Dolphins were onto something with Jay Cutler. If a team like the Dolphins is going to actively remove several good players to have control in the draft, they are going to need to be patient and let the GM fulfill the plan, and also make sure no one notices. Unlike this season, where everyone noticed and the league guilted them into playing Ryan Fitzpatrick instead of Josh Rosen. And now the Dolphins are fucked because Ryan Fitzpatrick hasn't been in the league for 15 years and played for 8 teams to be the Patriots' gimp. No, Fitzy is in command, or at least a gunslinger, or at the very least a dad who has 7 kids to pay for once they all get into Harvard. And even if you're good enough to lose, but not too conspicuously, then you've got to get lucky and draft the right fucking quarterback and not say 5 wide receivers for no reason. And then pray to Matt Millen, the patron saint of tanking, you have the right head coach in place in Brian Flores or Zach Taylor. If it's not Adam Gase, you have a chance. But chances are, just as likely, you don't do any of that and you get Rod Marinelli, 10-38, or Marty Morningweg, 5-27, or Steve Mariucci, 15-28, and you draft 5 wide receivers for no reason. What did we learn from the 2018 draft? Lamar Jackson is the best second-year QB from the 2018 draft because he's that much better of an athlete than everyone else on earth. He has a very good head coach and stability within a well-run organization willing to adapt to his skills. Baker, Darnold, Rosen, they're not winning their teams any games. Josh Allen is slowly improving, but he has a great defense helping him, and he still remains a big project. I just don't know how any team can hang their hat on the idea that the 2020 QB draft class will save them. Are there any Andrew Lucks out there? And by that I mean a slam dunk quarterback who will instantly be great, raise the level of the team, and suddenly retire and crush the heart of everyone who loved him for being good at football. Now let's look at the college quarterbacks this season. Are they really as good as advertised, or is a greater demand at the position inflating their stock? First, Tua Tagovailoa, a player we met for the first time in the national championship. Wait, back up. The first time we met Tua was when some Alabama fan called into the Paul Feinbaum show and said he was worried about the language barrier. Tua is from Hawaii. They speak English there, or at least that's what I remember from the movie Pearl Harbor, Ben Affleck's finest work. Anyways, in his first significant action, after stealing Jalen Hurts' whole life, he threw the game-winning touchdown pass to win the college football championship over Georgia. He then followed that up with an undefeated season as a starter before losing to next year's presumptive #1, Greta Thunberg. I'm sorry, no, that's Trevor Lawrence. The problem with Tua, he's got the best talent and the best system and rarely plays tough competition. As NFL Network's Daniel Jeremiah said on his podcast, he can't even evaluate him yet because they haven't played a worthy opponent. He's got a perfect pocket and wide receivers with 10 yards of separation every play. He should look like the #1 pick. But what happens when he's playing behind the Bengals line and throwing to the shadow that used to be a real AJ Green? Try throwing for 400 yards with your left hand then, Tua. Oh, he's actually left-handed. Sorry. Your right hand. And after a loss to LSU, is Tua still even the guy? Is that what you're going to use to justify a complete tank? And what if Tua doesn't want to play for the Bengals or the Dolphins, where they speak even worse English than they do in Hawaii? He's got a pretty simple alternative. Just go back to Alabama for his senior year and continue to get better. The second tier guys in this draft are Justin Herbert from Oregon and Joe Burrow from LSU. the fact that Burrow can understand his head coach,
I believe it. But it was no Vince Lombardi speech or nothing, but I just challenged him.
means he's already overcome the language barrier. Now, there are two very different cases here. Justin Herbert has basically been a top 5 pick for the last 4 years, while Burrow has become a first rounder in just the last few weeks. Although the fact that he was sitting behind Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State forever doesn't reflect well on him, or at the very least, Urban Meyer. Basically, being drafted by Washington has made Haskins and everyone associated with him look bad. The Redskins are patient zero for squandered potential. Justin Herbert checks off all of the John Elway boxes: strong, big arm, and strong, big arm. And Joe Burrow, well, everyone in the nation saw his bare ass against Mississippi State and bears a strong resemblance to Jim Brewer of the great American comedy film Half-Baked. If you can figure out a playbook scribbled down in Creole gibberish, the West Coast offense will be a piece of cake to pick up. After LSU's big win, everyone is saying blow for Burrow instead of tank for Tua. That's how quickly quarterback opinions change, and shows a lack of respect for catchphrases. Neither QBs are sure things. Herbert has probably slightly hurt his stock by staying in school an extra year, considering he hasn't really looked dominant at any point this season. And as for Burrow, it should be a little concerning that while he's looking great this year, it's only been a sample size of 10 or so games. The next tier includes 2 Georgia quarterbacks, Jake Fromm and Jacob Eason. Fromm is still at Georgia. He beat out Eason, who then transferred to Washington so he could start. 2 very different players. Eason is a tall, lanky quarterback with a cannon for an arm. If you watch some of his throws against BYU and ignore all of the bad parts, you would take Eason number 1 without a doubt. If you don't ignore all of the bad parts, the concerns are his ability to master the playbook, decision making, and what would appear to be colorblindness, which completely outweigh being able to throw the ball through brick walls. Fromm is the opposite. He's an efficient game manager type with decent measurables, basically an Alex Smith type in a high-powered offense. So exactly like Alex Smith in college. And a lot of teams would probably spend the number 1 overall pick on an Alex Smith type. In fact, the 49ers did spend the number 1 overall pick on an Alex Smith type. Alex Smith. Not a lot of upside though, and a team is going to spend a first rounder on Eason knowing they can get anyone from Paxton Lynch, okay, maybe he's not that bad, to, and I hate making this comparison, but someone like Ben Roethlisberger. So now I can add Jacob Eason to the list of oversized quarterbacks who have been compared to Big Ben. Here's the other problem. They could both return for their senior year, and they would probably benefit from doing so. To round out the potential first rounders, you've got Oklahoma's Jalen Hurts and Utah State's Jordan Love. One thing I know for sure, Love hurts. And I'm not going to pretend like I've watched a second of Utah State football this season. So in conclusion of quarterback tanking, QB drafting, talking. Can you tank in the NFL? Not when you know there's always going to be a lone Chinese man blocking the path of that tank. And in this very flawed and probably inappropriate analogy, Tank Man is the coaching staff and the 53-man roster who are paid to win, like the Dolphins, who despite having one of the least talented rosters in recent memory, have won their last 2 games. Thank you, Brian Hoyer, which should probably make Brian Flores the coach of the year. Stockpiling draft picks does work. We know this because good teams do it all the time, but losing games on purpose to increase the value of your draft picks does way more damage than good for your ultimate goal of winning games on purpose, making the playoffs, and having your fans show up to your games not wearing paper bags over their heads, putting tape over the names of the terrible draft picks on their jerseys, and not burning coaches, quarterbacks, GMs, and owners in effigy to stop from feeling the pain and sorrow of being stuck in the same city as you. The point is, you gotta build a winning culture as a football team. You can be bad, you can recognize you're bad, and bet on the future by getting rid of players who might not fit or want to be in your long-term plans in exchange for draft picks and cap space so you can piece your team together through free agency and the draft. A 53-man roster will always make the idea of tanking in the NFL laughable. A tank is a fun thing to root for in terms of making shitty YouTube videos or tweeting, but if you realize finding a franchise quarterback is incredibly difficult and a huge gamble, a tank is the least safe emergency plan for an organization, like a Dwight Schrute fire drill. You could be Washington, drafting Dwayne Haskins in this last draft, with a front office that has absolutely no vision and possibly land the #1 overall pick and would essentially be in the exact same position as the Arizona Cardinals were in, taking a quarterback #1 after drafting a QB in the first round the year before. Something so crazy we never thought we would see it again, and now we are very close to seeing it happen in back-to-back seasons. It's good to have a plan as a franchise, but there has to be a plan B in case you need to quickly get rid of the quarterback you drafted. And there it is, your Patreon first episode. Again, I think I'll put a poll up here on Patreon so you can pick the topic of the next episode. Will and TJ and I want to just do kind of deep dives into shit you want us to talk about. Stuff we can spend more time discussing here on Patreon than for my normal YouTube videos. And thank you for all of your money and support. Seriously, without your Patreon support, I couldn't be living. I mean, I would be alive, but I wouldn't like it.